Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about Alita Battle Angel? Stick around and find out. Hey, I'm Peter Franson. That's a deep cut, by the way. Bonus points for anybody that can tell me. I even had to Google that to make sure I could remember the tune right. I might have gotten the ending wrong a little bit. I'm not sure. Anyway, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Here's my uncut review of Alita Battle Angel. The synopsis on IMDb, which I'll fill in quite a bit actually, reads, a deactivated female cyborg is revived but cannot remember anything of her past life and goes on a quest to find out who she is. Well, there's some significant other elements in play. You've got kind of like this dystopian future where you've got like a high floating city that has all presumably like the rich wealthy people, you know, they're doing great in life and just kind of looking down on the lower class citizens who live in the slums on the surface, and everybody in the low city slums wants to live in the high city, you know, wonderful place. But Alita specifically wants to go there because her body came from there. It was dropped into the trash from this floating city, and her body was recovered and she was restored by this cybernetics doctor. And her ticket to getting up to that city and finding out answers to where she came from, who she is, because she's lost her memory, of course, is winning this futuristic sport called motorball that everyone's obsessed with. But there's an unseen enemy from this floating city that wants her dead before she can get there and find the answers that she seeks about her past. So, but clearly she has a past that it makes her a lot more than what she seems, because she discovers that she's extremely capable when it comes to any kind of combat situations. So her past is a big mystery. That's one of the things that's slowly uncovered as things go on, and she's trying to get up to this city. So anyway, as far as what type of story this is, what the script is like, it's sci-fi action with crazy imaginative elements based largely on cybernetic replacement. So there's lots of actors who were probably wearing like green or blue motion capture suits with a little bit of their, you know, flesh parts showing, and the rest just got all replaced by, you know, CG and stuff. It also has, though, despite that kind of like big, huge, almost summer movie type of vibe, despite the fact that it's releasing here in February, it has recurring touches of family drama, as Alita takes on the role of a sort of daughter to this doctor of cybernetics that found her and restored her to life. And there's also some budding romance between Alita and a boy that's living in the low city. The tone is largely serious, surprisingly to me, given like how much this looks like a brainless, silly CG fest. You know, it actually has a largely serious tone. The story explores loss on several occasions that are crucial to the story. But Alita is also so sweet and naive that for me, there's always her brightness that was contrasting with the dark world. Even in the middle of scenes where she's kicking major butt, you know, there's this naivete and real sweetness about her that I found very endearing. I was surprised at how drawn in I was to the story and to the stakes. It would be so easy for me in a CG fest like this to be totally checked out and not feel the stakes at all and just see a bunch of cartoons and actors looking at tennis balls, you know. And I think the reason that I was able to invest in the story and the stakes was because time was given to exploring Alita's desire to find her place in the world, and also time was given to scenes showing the affection that other characters have for Alita. She's so powerful, and yet she's also vulnerable, both physically and emotionally. And that's a really cool thing to see happen. You know, a lot of times when a character is super capable, I just don't worry about them at all. But they still found ways to make her physically vulnerable and certainly emotionally vulnerable, that had me connected to the stakes of the big, you know, CG combat scenes. So yeah, it would have been really easy for me to be disconnected, but the time they gave to Alita's character and motives made the times that she was in peril tense for me, and the times that she suffered loss, sad, even tragic for me. I never literally had tears like running down my face, but there were several moments that really took me to the edge of that. My only major problem with the story is that we don't get a proper ending. No spoilers, I'm going to be very vague. Instead, we just get an ending that clearly is setting up a sequel. It's not exactly a cliffhanger, but it's a glaringly unfinished story and ended in a way that almost yanked the rug out from under me. If they make a sequel that's just as enjoyable to me as this one, well then great, I'll have two movies in my collection I'll really enjoy. But at best case scenario, that's got to be, 2, 3, 4 years off? I mean, this movie took a while to develop, I think, and was delayed maybe once or twice. So anyway, and if a sequel is never made, then part of me is going to be sad that I ever invested in this one at all, After such a nice, solid experience throughout the movie, I left the theater with a bad taste in my mouth because of how robbed I felt of an ending. As far as the cast goes, I felt like they were solid performances all around. Rosa Salazar did the voice and the motion capture for Alita, and there were definitely some moments that pierced my heart and just that really had nothing to do with the dialogue. So it really, I think, did have everything to do with her performance choices. So despite her looking... they're getting closer, they're getting better. I think we're maybe 5 to 10 years away, 10 probably is more likely, to having CG characters that to me look indistinguishable from reality. It's all about the movement and motion capture, it's less about the texture. The way her hair moved sometimes looked just a little bit underwater-like, So anyway, but it was odd. It was like, sometimes I was like, this feels real, this looks kind of real, oh, no, now it doesn't, So it's back and forth, but anyway, she was making some really nice performance choices that I think elevated the material. But the standout for me is Christoph Waltz, who plays the father figure to Alita, this cybernetics doctor that finds her body and restores her to life. He's so gentle and kind and protective of Alita in a way that isn't dominating, but rather has this kind of quiet yet fierce love for her. And he helped me to fear for Alita's safety. That character and his performance of it just tapped into that protectiveness of a father that, as a dad, I can certainly relate to. So I really appreciate what he brought to the movie. As far as the visuals, go, I've already talked a little bit about them. There is a ton of CG in this movie that my cursed eyes look at and see clear as a cartoon, But there's also some in the mix, as I mentioned, that look really good, It's usually, again, related to movement and not texture. I think the more they can improve technologically on their ability to capture movement accurately and reproduce that in the final product, I think that's going to be the key to ultimately fooling my cursed eyes. Alita is completely CG. I kind of wish they would have just used an actress and enlarged her eyes like they did with that one small tertiary character in J.J. Abrams' Star Trek, and then kind of shrank her body maybe as well, like what they did in with Chris Evans in the Captain America movies. But going full CG, I have to admit, also allowed her to have fight choreography that was faster and more acrobatic than humanly possible. Not quite inhuman enough, in my mind, to justify going CG with her. I mean, I wonder, could they have used the actress and then switched to full CG for combat? They do that certainly in a number of other movies, so maybe they could have done that here. I don't know. I'm of two minds, really, about their choice to go full CG with her, but it was still pretty impressive, and like I said, what they did in terms of her character helped me to invest, in the action. I mean, the story moments, the overall stakes, I was in, So when someone who, is, what are my notes saying here? Oh, yeah. It wasn't just like the overall story that I was invested in, but little story moments. And sometimes when other characters would get killed or something like that were cybernetic, I still felt, even though they hadn't spent time investing in that character, for some reason I still would recoil and be like, oh, that looks painful. Where if I was watching some other movie with this much CGI, I'd just be like, yep, there goes some more CGI and there's a robot getting killed or whatever the crap, But I still felt I was invested in kind of like the reality of this world, dramatically speaking. So all that they did dramatically helped me to invest in the reality of the CG. So it still looked artificial to my cursed eyes, but it was compensated for by the other choices that they made. Now, as far as like themes, is there anything of moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance going on in this movie that might stimulate some worthwhile thought or conversation? Well, the major theme I noticed anyway was coming of age. age, and specifically how a parent and child navigate that in the sort of tug of war for control. Alita is growing up before Dr. Ito's eyes, and really literally in one sense, and Alita, though naive, is wanting more freedom and more control despite not having much wisdom. My two boys aren't in that stage of life. I've got one that's 11. He'll be, a teenager much faster than I'd probably want him to be. So I'll be dealing with more specifically these kinds of coming of age issues, in a couple years out. But already, I can relate a little bit to that tug of war of like the child wanting control and the parent wanting to protect. And I've been on the other side of that too, of parents, that are controlling more than I want them to. So I do think that the messaging possibly leans a bit in the favor of the child wanting freedom. I'm not sure. I don't remember the story highlighting any negative consequences for what Alita does against her surrogate father's wishes. But again, neither is Ito portrayed as domineering. He clearly has a soft heart and great affection for her. They seemed less interested in saying, the father was wrong or the child was wrong and like picking sides in this tug of war. They more so just seemed interested in acknowledging the difficulty of that struggle and that there are two real, people involved in this that both have some legitimate feelings in the mix there. And I think as believers, whether we are parents or children or both, we could benefit from this movie as a springboard to reflect on our relationships with our parents or our children, particularly as it relates to that struggle for control, which can still continue on when children become adults and move out of their house, their parents' house. And I think it's helpful to realize that on the opposite side of that tug of war that we're in is another person, not just an opposing force. And considering their feelings in the middle of that might help to at least de-escalate some of the tension, and possibly even provide a better starting point for understanding and possible compromise. Two passages from Scripture came to mind for me that I looked up so that I could quote them for you directly here. The first is Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 through 4 in the ESV that reads, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land." They're quoting the Old Testament there. And then Paul goes on to say, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord." And then a partner to that, I think, is Colossians 3, verses 20 and 21 in the ESV that reads, "Children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord. Fathers, do not provoke your children, lest they become discouraged." Now, I have no idea what your tastes are in movies, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Peter, oh man, wait. See what the reception is. See if you can get a sense of whether or not a sequel is going to be made. If you get the feeling that a sequel is very likely, then buy this one. You're going to want it in your collection. You'll probably want the sequel too, even if it doesn't live up to how much you're going to enjoy this one. Buy this one. Watch it with your boys. I think they can handle it. You're really going to like this one. It's rated PG-13 for sequences of sci-fi, violence, and action, and for some language. Those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that notification bell, anything that you can do to spread the word about this content, I'd be really grateful for. And then I hope you join us over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. All right, I gotta go shave. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. We've got a ton going on here at Spirit Blade Productions and Christian Geek Central, including our in-depth Bible study for geeks, movie, game, and other entertainment reviews or commentary, live streams, Christian geek news, original audio dramas, and tons more. And on top of all that, you can become a Spirit Blade insider with an influential voice and get access to exclusive content and rewards. It's your involvement as a patron that will keep all of this going and growing, so I want to thank you for your consideration in that. For more information, please check out our Patreon page through the link below at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. Thanks for listening.